Thank you so much for joining us here on an exciting episode. Typically, here on the Fi Guys podcast, if you are an avid listener, you know that on Monday, we like to come in with some notes, some information, a topic that we're going to be discussing. But just like you are today, I'm in the same exact place. I have no idea where this conversation is going to go because Dominic and I are going to sit down and just have a wide ranging conversation as to what's going on in our lives, maybe the future of Fi, maybe what we see this podcast going towards. I have no idea. But Dominic, what is it that's going on in your life? What do you want to start our conversation at? Where should we begin this journey of discovery in our podcast episode?
You know, when you when we pulled up the notes today and we did our intros for the guest podcast this week, highly recommend y'all go out and listen to those. There's some great. Chris has been on on the move, man. He's been going on guest podcasts, bringing people in, people that are exciting. So please go and listen to those. We were recording an intro for that, and we came over here, and I was like, I was trying to find the notes for today's episode, and it was just says podcast idea, and I'm like, what do we? What's the move today? It's just like, I got something you're gonna love. It's like, all right, here we go. We're just gonna talk for like an hour straight, and we don't know where it's gonna go. So I'm like, oh, that's great. I love that. Right. Um, it's the first thing that kind of comes to mind is it's so interesting where you can get lessons from. You get lessons from the weirdest places sometimes, but I feel like most people aren't open to learning. Like you have to keep your eyes open to like really catch these lessons here and there. Um, a lesson that I've learned recently that I don't know if I can equate it to five, but I thought it was coming from an interesting place. Um, two things, right? So as the viewer may or may not know, as Chris, you may or may not know, I was working on this bench, right? My L-shaped, I don't know, breakfast nook, right? If you know anything about me, I am not a woodworker. I don't know anything about that world. But I aspire to know more about that world. So I dove in deep and decided to take up a little bit of a home project, a woodworking project. Definitely got in a little bit over my head, right? But similar to the book that I'm reading from Marcus Aurelius, I don't know what I'm doing half the time, right? I don't know what's going on. And I feel like that is a great place to be. And granted, it's going to cost me twice as much and take me 3 times as long. But in the end, I probably could have spent a lot less on something maybe better in quality. But it's the tools and tips and tricks and the things that you learn about yourself along the way. One being that sometimes you have to take the first step, even when you don't know where that foot is going to step. It's like you're walking in fog on water and you go to step. It's like, I don't know if I'm going to fall through the water or am I going to float? Right. Um, I definitely recommend everybody to tackle some home projects that are a bit ambitious. It'll test your relationship. It will test your ability. And it's good to like stress test the things that we talk about. Right, Chris? Have you found that in your own life that, it's wonderful talking about theory. It's wonderful talking about, well, this is how this should happen. And when X happens, this too shall pass, and like all these different things. But it's so much different when you get hit in the, like you said, right? Like Mike Tyson says, it's like everybody has a plan until they get hit in the face. It's like, absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't know, have you had any strange lessons in the last couple of weeks that's like from an unknown place? Like, oh wow, I didn't think I was going to learn anything here, but here I'm getting this lesson from this.
It's kind of funny that you mentioned that. I recently had an interview I've been looking at other jobs, recently, with moving back to San Diego, needing to bring in more money, having all these ambitions and plans and things to do. Um, so when I was interviewing with a job, I was actually asked a question about like, what's kind of your thought processes on on work and on flows and things like that. And I was talking about like my thought process is like we need to aggressively like things should be simplified. And I think a lot of times in business, people will say like, "Oh yeah, that's important," but they just make the most complex of systems because everyone's trying to show that they're putting in effort, they're putting in work. Like here, this is why my job is justified. It's because I do this. and everyone's doing that, we end up in this like super complex system of everyone having their own little parts that they're in charge of, so they can't really get fired. So I was explaining how my system is about aggressive simplification. And as I was describing it to the interviewer about like how my systems work, I was like coming to the realization of like, just because I understand all of it because I'm a part of it. Like my system is not that simple because I had to like keep on reiterating like, oh no, this does this here and this. So there was that moment of me kind of coming to the realization that, I preached something if you wanted things to be simple, yet I was confusing not only myself but also this other person. So I think it was kind of a funny lesson in that, even or like sometimes the learning comes from the conversation. Because in your head, when you have all these variables controlled, you're like, oh, yeah, this is super easy. But sometimes when you talk things out, and that's the reason I love doing the podcast with you, because I think a lot of people, when they hear people who do podcasts, like, oh, this person has this thought fully formed before they come to the podcast. And that's why so many podcasters get themselves in trouble because you don't. Like the way that you learn what your brain is actually thinking is by just having the conversation and letting it flow. And then sometimes you might be like, oh, I had no idea that was in there. I didn't know where that was going. And maybe you come to a realization on your own. So I think that's very cool. And that sometimes life's going to teach you that lessons. Sometimes yourself can teach you that lessons just by being, willing to talk about it and see if there's ways to improve or to get better.
I think that is very interesting. Um, Simplifying is the key to making things last, making things efficient. And also, I heard this once where it's like if you can't explain your plan to like a second grader, um, and them to repeat it back to you, then you probably don't have a good plan. It's interesting. I, I'm gonna say that a lot. I feel like every time we have a conversation, I'm so intrigued by what you're saying and where the conversation is go that it triggers like a few words that I always happen to say. But it's I had a conversation on I believe it was Friday, might have been Thursday or Friday with a friend of mine. And it's so interesting because it's not like I don't know if you have this relationship, Chris, but it's not like a best friend you call every day, right? But this guy is one of my best friends. Like I'd run into a burning building to save him, and 10 times out of 10 times, right? Love this guy. We met in college in an audio engineering club. We were gonna go do a studio tour. And I was like, hey, do you wanna just ride with me? He's like, yeah, sure. And then us started a great friendship, right? Um, we talk every couple months, right? And we'll see each other maybe a couple times a year. But every time we talk, he's a little bit older than me. I believe he's maybe 5 or 6, maybe 7 years older than me. So he's in a different stage of his life, but we have the same like mind, the same like thought process on a lot of things. And it's funny because we had a call on Thursday and it was an hour and a half. And in that hour and a half, we just talked about him and starting his business and his gym and like, it's like, he's like, hey man, I don't know what I should do for this and that. And I'm like, man, this is everything you wanted. This is everything you prayed for. Why aren't you taking that leap, taking that jump? He's like, you know what? Yeah. Like the stars can't align any better. And what's so interesting to me is because the call ended. For some reason, the call like died. And on the next hour and a half was just him and I talking about my problems. And it's so interesting what a third party, an objective third party can do. 'Cause it's like, dude, yeah, it's like you already have the plan. You just you feel like you need permission to like go for it. Like, dude, yeah, send it. If it fails, it fails. It's fine. Like stuff happens. It's okay. You're gonna fail. And I think sometimes we get so caught up with the details, like you said. I mean, the details of making things as complex as possible, and well, it has to be just so before I start, that we don't end up even starting. Case in point, sometimes I get real nerdy about certain things, i.e., paint sprayers, stuff like this. It's like, oh man, I wanna make this drawer system so perfect, but I want to get a sprayer. But if I get a sprayer, I want it to be one that, lasts, but the one that lasts is about $1,200, right? Is this worth it? Probably not. Not right now. So you have to create like your own proof to make it worth it and a bunch of different things. But I'm getting off on a tangent. I think it's so important to find those people in life that have the same mindset as you and the same desire to be better and the same desire to, it's like, hey, man, it's like, don't worry. On the other side of town, I'm also getting my teeth kicked in. It's okay. It's part of the game. And, it's rare when you find someone like that. And those are like the friendships. It's like, man, you don't let those go because they're so hard to find. I don't know if I have a question for you after that one, Chris. I
It's
kind of,
okay.
yeah.
I'll take it from here a little bit. It's funny that one of the big reasons my wife and I we went to dinner last night, and she was telling me that her nail stylist, were her and I were they were talking. I don't know what you do when you're getting your nails done, but I assume you just sit there and chat because there's really not a lot other things you can be doing.
Yeah.
Um, but the nail stylist was telling my wife like, "Hey, my husband's been thinking about doing jujitsu," and my wife's like, "My husband is a jujitsu practitioner and a jujitsu coach." And then the nail stylist asked my wife like, "So what is jujitsu?" And my wife's like, then she like tries to explain based on what she's seen me do, but she's like, "I don't know. It's like fighting on the ground or something." Um, so like I explained it to my wife, but and then she's like, right now I'm going through this knee rehabilitation, so I can't train. And my wife asked me like after that, she's like, "Do you want to go back to jujitsu when your knee's better? Do you want to risk your like knee to go and train again?" And I was like, 100%, 100%. And she's like, "Are you sure? Like look at like you couldn't literally a month ago you could not walk. Like, you've been in pain with your knee for years." And I'm like, "Yeah, but that's not because of jujitsu. That's because of other things that jujitsu may have not contributed to making it better. But it's, that's not jujitsu's fault that my knee is the way it is." And I told her, at the end of the day, like jujitsu is about self growth. It's about like getting better. It's about all of these things. Again, yes, it's about fighting. It's about all these things. But the reason that I love jujitsu, just to the same point that you talked about, is that's the only place in the world that I know of where you can go and legitimately try to kill another human being. And like it's completely legal. Like try to choke them, try to break anything you can. And just at the end of it, everyone's so happy. And like it's you ask your friends, like, "Hey, how'd it go for you?" Like, "Oh, got the shit kicked out of me
Yep.
up and down the mat," and then you get to see like, "Oh yeah, so did I." But we're still happy, we're still growing. Where I think too many people, they try to put on this facade of like, "Oh, I'm perfect, everything's going super well." And then it makes you feel like, "Oh, maybe it's just me." That's why it's so good to have those friends, to have those relationships where you have the ability to communicate openly and be like, "Yeah, this is how life is kicking me in the teeth too." And then that way you can feel like, "Oh, I'm not alone." Because yeah, maybe there are some superstars out there in jujitsu who came in and they were like, gold standard already.
Yeah.
But there's very few people in this life that can just step onto a mat and be good, without some background, without some training. Like even those who are good in jujitsu, they were like judo black belts or wrestlers through collegiate wrestlers, and then they step on the mat. It's like, all right, this person already has a natural inclination towards, grappling or jujitsu, but it's just because they're good at grappling because they've been doing it forever. Like no one starts out good at being able to fight. So that's kind of a good skill. And I think it's important that we all, maintain that not only in jujitsu, that I think it's important, but also just in life. And remember that we're all students, we're all learning. And I think the people that go on there saying, like, "I'm smarter than you, I know all of these things," is just because they're afraid to realize, like, "Oh, there was a time that I didn't know any of these things." It'd be like going up to someone who, yeah, going to a baby and be like, "Oh, you can't walk? Like, dumb baby. Like, I could walk from day one."
Dumb baby. That's really funny.
Like I
Okay.
could walk from day one, but in truth, like we all learn these things and we all came to information through time, through effort, through somebody teaching us and like guiding us on that path. I think it's really important, especially when it comes to finances, since we are the Fi Guys, that, when you hear somebody that is like maybe degrading you or making you feel less than for where you are financially compared to them, that has nothing to do with you. That has to do with them and their ego and like trying to push you down in order to build themselves up. And I know it's hard when you feel that moment where because I meet people very often who are far more wealthy than me, have far more like things than me. And it's sometimes even difficult to like, because I feel in myself like, oh man, this person's so much better than me. Like, look at all these things they have. And you have to come back to that realization of like, it's like, I'm not fighting. I'm not competing with this person. Like, I'm competing with myself to just get a little bit better. Um, there's this old story, and I can't remember who the book was. I think it was the author of The Great Gatsby or something like that. But an author walks in, and then like there's a party with all these authors, and some author walks in, maybe like James Clear or something like that, and one of the somebody else looks to somebody goes, how does it feel to know that this guy just outsold you in his first book for all the books you've written? It was, yeah, I mean, he has way more money than me, way more success, but I have something that he doesn't have. And the guy says, well, what could you have compared to this guy? And he goes, well, I have enough. And I know what enough is. And then it's like, oh, okay. Okay, so just focus on winning your or running your own race, even when you have that brain that wants to compare in order to know where you are in the pecking order. I know it's not easy because you also need to know where you are in the pecking order, but that's kind of the middle way of like understanding that both things are true simultaneously.
That's a great story. That's a great story. I do have a few questions to follow that up. I mean, one, have you I find I'm amazed and so impressed and in love with the idea that without hesitation, yeah, I'm going back. I'm going back into the fire. I'm going back into the place that makes me, it makes me get bruises and beaten up and I'm going back because I want to be better. I love that idea. I love that because I was watching it real closely and it's like, yeah, nope, of course, have to go back. Where a lot of people, they almost have like a PTSD, a fear. It's like, man, it's like, I I don't know, man. I don't know. And it's just like, no, we're going back. I love that mentality. I love that mentality. Um, finding enough, finding enough, man. That's that's a very, very, very difficult question. And I feel like oftentimes it's asked. I mean, you have to ask it, but it seems like one of those questions that, man, I just don't have enough answers. I don't have enough answers, yet to really give you a good answer on what is enough. But I think it's interesting how life works. How you were talking about, it's like, hey, well, if this guy's attacking, it's like, dude, it has nothing to do with you. It's so interesting to me that if we had the knowledge that, our level 10 brains had at level 2, our level 2 brain wouldn't have to suffer all the way to get to level 10. But at the same time, a lesson that's learned in secondhand isn't really a lesson that's felt as deeply. Um, so yeah, it's like on one hand, it's like, yeah, I wish I had the information that, in second grade when the teacher said this to me or an adult said that to me. It's like, oh, like, your opinion doesn't matter. My dad has a really good quote about this. Someone gave me their opinion recently, and I didn't ask for it, and I didn't like their opinion. And it was so interesting because it was like, yeah, okay, I'll preface this. So, um, to give a little bit more context to make it make more sense. So, um, I was talking with a friend, and they came over. We were just hanging out, and they sat on the bench and it's like, "Oh, that's cool and everything, whatever." And we went to Lowe's and I was looking at tools, they were looking at something else. They came back around, they're like, "Yeah, I was thinking about getting this router to like, smooth out this side and like have like a curved angle on the bench so like it doesn't hit your legs." And they're like, "You know what? I don't like your bench. I don't like it. Hurts my legs." I just like turned to them and I'm just like, who the asked you? Like, well, well, who cares what you think? One, it's not done. It's like, okay. Um, But my dad, and I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but hey, and also big shout out to my dad. It's his birthday today. But you know, he he's a very interesting character to me, at least, because He always used to tell me, if you don't like the answer you got, go to someone else to get an answer you do like. And he used to always tell me that if I want your opinion, I'll give it to you. Right. And if I don't want your opinion, I'm not going to ask. And that's just kind of how I felt, as a kind of like a defensive mechanism, like a knee jerk reaction. I was like, I don't care what your, this is my vision. This ain't your vision. This is my party. This ain't your party. This is what I don't need to live with, it's like, oh man, did I make you happy? Bro, I need to live with myself, dude. I got to live with myself. Um, and that's a lot more difficult said than done. Being it's like, there's a section in my journal and it's never checked. And at the top of the journal, it said, did you do enough today? And it's never enough. It's never enough. Yesterday, had about as good a day as I could. Right? We launched the Minecraft server for the final season. The At launch, it completely sucked. It completely sucked. It was way too laggy. And the mods had to do their things to help try and fix that. And then we went to the bench, more problems, just putting out fires here and there. And it was a great day. It was a glorious day. But part of the putting out fires is just, man, you have to take a step back and look and be like, so I put out 1,000 fires and here we are. We made a little bit of progress, but it's not done yet. It's not finished. But sometimes you don't know when finished is. You just kind of just have to accept it's like, hey, this is as good as it can be for right now.
Earlier you mentioned something that I kind of want to go back to. You said that you're reading a book by Marcus Aurelius and how it's kind of helping to, as you're like building this bench, like you're seeing maybe the obstacle is the way. Like or that's a direct quote from the book, but like you're learning. Maybe you're learning things. And can you tell me a little bit about that book? First off, what's the book called? Um, and what are some of the things that you've kind of gathered? How have you been applying it currently to what you're kind of describing going through?
It's Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, a book that it seems like it's like one of the most recommended books of all time. Um, I'm kind of annoyed that there's so many different versions of it.
Hmm.
I was at Barnes and Noble and I was like, oh, here it is. Here it is. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Here it is. I'm like, well, what the heck? Right. Um, I feel like this book is taking me back to school because every time I flip the page, I'm like, I don't get it. I don't understand this. I don't understand that. Oh, I kind of get that one. I kind of get this. I'm gonna be honest. I'm not in love with the style of the writing. Um, I I like the concept of it. It's like, oh, you know, my father, XYZ, this is what I learned. My mother, this is what I love the concept of it. I love it. For me though, as a book, I really love stories and I love like envisioning things. Um, so it's definitely a lot more difficult for me to like get into it because it's not story based. It's just pure gems. And for me, it's like, man, those are unfiltered gems. Typically, I get my gems through story, but this is just raw stories, or raw gems. You know, I can see why it's recommended so much. And I think I'm maybe getting 10% of the value out of it right now. I think I'm probably gonna have to like, all right, page one, this line, let's just read it and just sit with it and just think about it. Like, what does this mean? How can you relate this to your world? And why does this matter? Does it matter? Right? I think too often we don't question the things we read in books. I think it's so interesting. People just don't question books that often. You question the news, you question what's on the back of your food label, you question XYZ, but we rarely question books and if the information is good or bad. And I'm not saying that Marcus Aurelius is, his information is good or bad. It just is, like we talk about a lot. But was there some key takeaways that really stuck with you, Chris, on this book? Because I know you like this book. I know it sure changed your world
Yeah,
in a
and it's up there. It's one of those books that are up there, in terms of those key books for me. There's a lot of things that I want to talk about when it comes to towards meditation, when it comes to reading philosophy, right? I think the first thing that we need to talk about is like, what is the book? The book of Meditations. Meditations just mean like thoughts, like personal thoughts, right? So when you read the book, you're like, why isn't there a story? It's like, this was this man's journal. Like, Marcus Aurelius, the strongest man in the world. And I don't mean like physically, like he was the emperor of Rome, which was the strongest civilization at the time, writing in his personal journal. And I'm sure if he was still alive, he would be like personally like, what the hell? How do all these people have my diary? And they're like reading my diary. Like,
yeah.
there's a lot of stuff in there, but it kind of shows you that, this man lived over 2000 years ago, and he had the exact same struggles that we have today. And you can kind of see this like timeless wisdom of like, I remember one of my favorite ones is he's writing about having to wake up in the morning and like how nice his sheets feel and like how cold it is outside. And he wrote like, are you meant to hunker under the bed, or are you meant to get up and to get to work to put the world right again? And it's like, that's timeless wisdom. Like that's something that I struggle with even this morning. I'm like, man, it's cold. Like it feels nice under the bed. But is that your job, is to sit under the bed, or is it to start to not under the bed, but under the sheets?
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
go,
Chris,
not a,
what? Your wife has you under the bed? Like that? What a
not the
prick!
boogeyman. Like the
Yeah,
moment you put your ankles down, you get dragged under, son.
exactly. You gotta check under your bed for Chris these times, dude. Wow, scary times, man.
Yeah. But that's the way of the world. And I want to talk about something that I thought was just, you said that really intrigued me, is that you were saying like, I like stories. Like I like learning my lessons from stories. And I think that's just a natural thing that we all have. Like we are a human species that live in stories. Like everything that we have around us is a story of like how it worked, why we're here. And stories take a different version of our brain, right? It takes out that ability to discern truth, because if you tell a story, like that's the best way that like con artists do things, is because they'll put you into story mode and start telling you a story. You start listening and you start accepting things as true. And you pepper in enough truth and lies that you're like, okay, everything that they just said was true because I went into story mode. And that's good, but it can also be very dangerous. And philosophy is something that's very different. I think I remember the first time that I told you about meditations, I told you about philosophy, and you're like, I'm going to get an audiobook on it. And I remember telling you, like, that's not the way to do this. You're like, no, it's fine. I know what I'm doing. And I think later on you came back, you're like, I didn't understand any of that. I thought that was like the dumbest book I ever read. And I was like, you can't listen to it on an audiobook. Like you can, but you're not going to get anything out of it, because it's not a story. It's not going to tell you this is how to think about this. It's just random things. And I really think a lot about like, a man never steps into the same river twice. And that's for two reasons. Number one is the man, or the person, changes, and the river constantly changes. So, I mean, I read the Tao Te Ching pretty often, and that's Eastern philosophy, but that's the same thing of you read it and you're like, what, what did I just read? And then you think on it and you're like, okay, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And it's the same thing for people that like really enjoy poetry, right? Like I was never a big fan of poetry, never understood it, right? I was like, this is dumb. Like this seems silly. Or haikus, like this is silly. Like 575, like I don't get it. And then as you kind of, maybe as your brain levels up, or I'm not saying that you're not there, but like as you start to have these deeper concepts of things, you're like, oh, I can see where this is, or I can get something that this person's trying to get at. There's a Mexican poet, or a South American poet. His name is Octavio Paz, and I really love his poetry. And I never was a guy that liked poetry, right? But I found him in like, when I was in Mexico, I found him just like a book of poets. It is a daily, had every day had a different poet, a different poem on it. And I kept on coming back to it. Whenever I saw Octavio Paz in this book, I was like, I don't know what, like this, I don't know what he's saying, but like it is connecting with me on a deeper level. So I went through the whole book while we're sitting in this hotel, like trying to find every one of his things, and then, and I read some to my wife, because I'm like, you have to hear like how powerful this is. And I read it to her, and she's like, I don't get it. Like, that's dumb. And she like
Yeah,
walks
yeah.
away, and I'm like, what do you mean? Like, look at the words. And I think that's where like it's just different. Like you're going to step back into this river over and over and over again, and find different things maybe to the moment that you're like, I get it. Like I finally get it. And that's kind of stepping back into the arena over and over and over again, even the arena that you have already thought that you've surpassed, and realize like, oh my goodness, like I just when I sped run that thing without really getting into it to like really search all of the dungeons and all of the treasures to like find every part of it to get 100% completion in that part of the level. I just sped ran it because I wanted to get to the end goal. And like, maybe you want that perfect ending and like, what is it? Not Kingdom Hearts, but Final Fantasy. If you want that perfect ending, you need to do all the things. You need to get 100% on everything so you can get that perfect ending.
It's funny that you remember me wanting to get that on audiobook. Honestly, that's really funny. I remember that too. I remember that too. It's like, because I always do the audiobook. It's what I love. I put it on while I'm doing the dishes or like, you know, XYZ. It's like, no, 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 no. It won't make any sense. Don't do it. Don't do it. Yeah, it's I'm trying not to say it's interesting, right? But everything about this conversation is intriguing to me. But I find it puzzling that you can come back to a book and get different lessons. Like, oh, I didn't hear that last time. Did I read? I skipped that chapter. No, you read it. You just weren't high enough level to understand it. It's, oh, okay. I think that's why it's so important to really revisit those key lessons in your life because not only the lessons might change, but obviously, you're going to change along the way. But I guess it also depends. It's like, well, did the world change? And is the lesson still pertinent to your world at least? And some of those things like, moral questions. If the world changes, you change with it. One of the things that I love most about certain family members is how stubborn they are, right? And for me, that's very. I know this sounds really weird to some people because I can just picture it's like, dude, yeah, my mom is so stubborn, my dad is so stubborn, XYZ, my cat is so stubborn. It's like it's such a terrible trait. It's like, no, no, no. It's like, why do we have people like this? Right? Well, we need people like this. We need people that are stubborn. We need people that's like, hey, if the whole world's telling you to move and you feel that you're right and the world's wrong, well, plant yourself like a tree. No, you move. I'm not moving. We need that level of arrogance. Honestly, I feel like we need that back in society. I feel that people have too much fear of the mob. And let me explain that a little bit more. I feel like in today's society, in the last like 15 years, maybe 10, 15 years, people have just thrown out ideas that are just so crazy. And the mob is just like, yeah, let's try it out. Let's do it. But there's not anybody who stands there and be like, no, that's wrong. That's not right. And that's where those stubborn people come into play. But it's difficult to be that stubborn person. It's difficult to stand up in the middle of the class and call the teacher out for being wrong, calling someone else out for being wrong. Who am I to determine what is right and wrong? But someone has to, right? I don't know. It seems like we live in a very strange world. And I know, like you said, I love with the river comment. It's like you never step into the same river twice because you're not the same man and the river is not the same as well. I almost said because you're not the same river. Um, but how do you stand strong, Chris, when like what anchors a person to stand strong when the winds of society are blown at 100 miles an hour?
I think it's going to be hard. Like it's always going to be hard. I think that we like if you want a clear cut answer, I won't be able to give it to you. I think in the end, like we say it all the time, and like I'm sorry to say it again, but it's like know thyself, and it's like you
Okay.
have to begin to understand like what are my principles, what are my goals. I think I was talking to a friend yesterday about this, and a lot of people, they'll look back, and I'm just going to use World War II as like a perfect example. But they hear World War II and they're like, "Man, I would have, I would have hit Anne Frank. Like I'd have been the good person solving all the problems. Like I would have been the guy who's trying to fight against against Nazis, against everything. I'd have been that guy." But it's like, or that girl. It's like, but in truth, most likely you wouldn't have. Most likely, you would have been the guard searching. Like, and that's just it. And I think we need to understand that, like, we all have this propensity within us. We all have the propensity to be extremely evil, to do the worst things in the world. And the fear is, at some point, if you get pushed and pushed and pushed, or society just kind of goes along with it, and you don't know what your guiding light is or your principles, it becomes the right thing to do. Like, you look back to like World War II, there was a book, it's called What We Knew, I believe. And it's all about like just the rise of the Third Reich from the point of views of the average German citizen who was like not a Nazi. They were just like, they were normal people, right? And then society pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed into this direction where mm, some of the world's worst atrocities were committed because they thought they were right. In fact, they were certain they were right. Like, we're doing the right thing here. So if you don't have those principles, and then eventually, and also the people that did stand up, that did say, "Hey, this is wrong," that stood by their principles, they were murdered. They were straight up killed. And you see that happen again and again and again. And eventually, your caveman brain's going to kick in and say, "Hey, we know what we need to do to survive. Like, our goal is to survive." There's this old movie. It's called Small Soldiers. Came back in the '90s. It's about these funny little toys, and they end up, as they're getting manufactured, they end up getting put in with like these AI chips, military grade AI chips. And these toys, it's a silly movie. It's rated PG-13, but my parents thought it was a PG movie because it has toys in it, and it's definitely not. Like, it scared me
Okay.
as a kid. Um, but in the book, there's this, or not in the book, but in the movie, there's the military guys who are actually the bad guys, and then there's these other things are supposed to be like the monsters the military guys fights against. And they're actually the good guys because they like have wisdom, and they're trying to like live in nature and like live in harmony. And the military guys is like, no, we know what the goal is. Like, the goal is you're the bad guys and we're going to kill you. Like, that's the goal. Um, and they're willing to commit a bunch of atrocities in order to complete that goal. But there's one of the scenes that I still remember to this day, and it's one of the monster toys. He's like talking to one of the humans, and he's saying, and like he's coming to the final battle, and the guy's like, "I don't want you to die. I don't want you to do these things to me." He's like, "We need to have honor in death. Like honor in death is the most important thing to me," or something to that effect. And I think, to those people that stood up against the Third Reich, the people that like fought and said the words, and they paid the ultimate price for it. We remember those people nowadays of like, man, those were the heroes. Like, even if they didn't change the way that it went, like, those were the heroes. So I think there is something in, honor in death. And I'm not saying like go out there and try to get yourself killed, like, so you can be like, I'm a martyr, I did the right thing. But we do need to try to have some lines that we try not to cross. But I'm also not saying like, oh, go get yourself killed for like the wrong reason. And I don't know, like, there is no right and wrong reason. It's all going to be dependent on the story of who's telling it, if it was the right reason or the wrong reason. Like, that truth, like, a truth is like a very, or what's right and wrong, truth, those are these indiscernible terms of like, well, what does it mean? Who actually gets to say what is right and wrong? Because there could be a world, if you read like The Man in the High Castle, like, there's a world where World War II was won by the Axis powers, and now we live in a world where, like, can you believe that like those allies thought that people were like equal? Like, that could have very easily been the thing. I remember I had a history teacher that would always say this, like, to the spoils, to the
So the
to,
victor.
yeah, 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 to the spoils go the victors of war. And I always thought, like, yeah, of course they get the money, they get the treasures, they get the whatever, but I think the biggest thing they get is the ability to rewrite the history.
Yeah.
They get the ability to say things. And if you ever read George Orwell's 1984, like, that's one of those books where you read it, you're like, he who controls the past controls the future. If you control the history, You control what people think. You control how people continue to move forward. You control that national identity or that story that we all tell ourselves we are. And that story is the most powerful thing in where we're going. And I think you kind of touched on a little bit, Dominic, earlier that like right now we're in this point in society where we've lost, I say it a lot, like we lost the plot. Like we have all of these different competing stories as to who we are as a society, what America means, what Iran mean, what China means, and what all these countries mean. And if we can't unite under one common story of like we are good or we are just or we're trying to get better, and we just want to talk about how awful we all are, why continue to try? Like why try to get better if it doesn't matter what you do because you're already effed, like you're already bad. And then you end up in that place where I'm so afraid of when I talk with young people is that nihilistic view of like, why even try?
Yeah.
Like, why even try? Because I can't fix it anyways. And if that's the thought process, you will get where you're afraid of going much faster because you're not going to try to do other things. And that's where that old Henry Ford quote comes from. Like, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right because you're going to create that reality. If you think you can do something, you will try to look for ways to do it. And if you think you can't do something, the moment you come up against an obstacle, which I guarantee you will in any endeavor that you want, you're going to give up and you won't be able to achieve it. Lots of thoughts there.
No, a lot of great thoughts there. A lot to unpack. It's always easier being courageous when there's nothing on the line.
Or when you have everyone at your back saying you're being courageous. When you're
That's
on a
not
team,
courage.
right?
Yeah.
When you're on a team of like, oh yeah, we're all doing the right thing together. And like that's something I see a lot, like especially in politics today. Everyone on the right, like we're all the right, like we're all the good guys, and everyone on the left, we're all the good guys. We're fighting against the left or against the opposite side. And I like to use or like to say that like anger is an intoxicant. It's like getting drunk, right? Like when you are drunk, like when you're just like fully wasted, like whatever you think you're going to do, whatever like a dumbass idea you have, you're like, this is the greatest idea I've ever had in my life. Like, why have I not done this before? Everyone from the outside is like, this person's going to fall off a bridge. But in your brain, you're like, this is the greatest idea I've ever done. And anger is that same thing. Like it takes out the inhibition. It gives you directionality. Like anger is meant to tell you like, this are the bad guys. I know they're the bad guys and I will do whatever I need to do to win. And it gives you certainty in a very uncertain world. Like I think that's what people are striving for when they team up, when they tribe up with somebody. Like the world's scary. The economy is going to shit. I can't buy a house. I can't find a job. I don't know what's going to happen with my retirement. There might be a nuke that goes off tomorrow. Oh, the gas prices keep on going up and up and up. I know who the problem is. It's those guys. And I know it's those guys because I'm with these guys, and these guys say that those guys are the problems. And if we get rid of those guys, then we'll all be okay. And we all kind of think that because that's what our tribal ancestors did. Like we went to war in order to acquire more resources over and over and over again. And now we're at a point where like we don't really need to do that, but we still have that hardware. And maybe we do need to do that. I don't know. Maybe we do need to continue to fight. Maybe, something I think about from a history standpoint, and I've been a big fan of like history for a very long time, is the world order, the past 80 years, the past of what who everyone's listening on this podcast knows of peace, of, everyone kind of stay in your own lane. Everyone continue to, we'll all work together, try to get better. In all of human history, 80 years is all we have of that being the norm. The norm of all of history, besides these past 80 years, has been war, has been death, has been conquest, has been people like, that's the big thing with like Russia going into Ukraine, right? It was like, oh my goodness, like we don't do this anymore. Like that was the norm. That was baseline forever.
Yeah.
Like, that just was. And now we freak out and like, you can't do that. It's like, no, that is exactly what it is. Like life is power. Like things will continue, like all beings, all systems will continue to grow until they meet a sufficient force to stop them from that growth, to impede their growth. So we need to kind of like think about that and again, it's difficult because like, where do you go with that? And I think the most important thing, kind of to wrap up my my TED talk here is certainty is intoxicating. That anger gives you certainty. It gives you like, I know exactly. And I think that the most dangerous thing in the world is a man or a woman, a person who is certain, who knows I know exactly what their answer is. Because I can almost guarantee like you don't. Like we as human beings don't have the ability to see truth. And again, truth is like a big word and you have to like really define what truth is. But like as human beings, we see 0.3% of the electromagnetic spectrum. 0.3, not even one, like not even 1.3, like not even 1% is what we are able to see of light, of energy sources. Yet we think we see everything. We can hear in like the smallest of ranges, yet we think we hear everything. We can smell nothing, yet we think we can smell nothing. Like we are locked, like, everything that you see, touch, interact with touch, like you think it's happening, but it's all happening through neural impulses in your brain. Like you don't actually see anything. You don't actually touch anything. Like where are you as a person? Like that's the philosophical question of like all religions. So for you to say, I know with certainty this is what's going to happen or this is what we need to do, you don't know shit. And like no one knows anything, but we all look for that certainty. We all look for that guy or that gal that says, I know where we need to go. Listen to me. So that I can feel safe, I can feel secure, and I know what next step to take rather than being scared and kind of bumbling around in the dark like most people do for a majority of their lives until
Yeah.
you figure out a path for you.
So interesting because it seems like every 4 years someone comes around. I am the guiding light. I am the one that can lead us out of the darkness. I am the one. I'm the only one. That's always the key. It's not that we can do it. It's like, no, only I can do this. Only I can fix this. And it's like you said, it's once you understand how the board game works, you can play the game and dial it in perfectly. It's like, "Oh, yeah, I understand that people are scared and that they, they need a hero. They need a hero. They need a villain in their story. For some reason, they've traumatized the political spectrum, and they need me to be the good guy. They need me to be the bad guy." And it's so weird. I oftentimes think of this, and it I don't know, messes with my brain a little bit, but man, what would George Washington think of the people and how cowardly we are if he came back and saw everything that's happening? It's like, man, they revolted obviously over other things, but the 3% tax on tea and like it's just on tea. Like what? Um, Granted, soldiers were being quartered in their houses as well and other things, I'm sure, but like, man, I feel like we've gotten to a point in society where our lives are just good enough not to revolt, and the consequences are just scary enough for us to keep us in check.
You
I
know,
think it's so yeah, go for it. No, you
you
can
know
go for it. Go
it's
for it.
kind of funny, but like that is like all of life, right? Like think about for for our listeners, for you, Dominic, like we go to work, we do our job, we get paid for it. And like the amount of money you get paid is enough money for you not to revolt. Like that, if you really think about it, like I pay you enough to not revolt and kill me.
Yeah.
Like just enough. And if you think about that from like a societal level, like we keep you just alive enough to not revolt. Like, I
I
mean, think
used to
about it right now. Like, I'm
you
sorry,
go
just think about it
no,
like
no,
this. Like,
you go
if
for it.
you walked into work tomorrow and your boss, like you say you work for a large organization, you're outside the office and your bosses come out and say, hey, like everything's going really well with the company, but we're just going to reduce everyone's salaries by 10%. Just cause like those bosses would be out the window in like 10 seconds. Like they pay you just enough to not revolt. But if they give you a convincing story, hey, this is the reason, blah, 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 and they put you into story mode, doesn't matter if it's true or not. then you might be able to listen to it and like be like, okay, like I understand where this is coming from. But if they just come out and say like we're doing this because we want to, like philosophy tells you, like you read the book of philosophy and just like these are just words without a good story, you might end up revolting and like killing somebody. But like that's how our society works. Is like it's all just about like keeping you just passive enough. And this is not a podcast about like revolt against the system, anarchy is the way. Like that's not it,
No.
you know. Because but it's just like we keep on moving. We as human beings want to live in the extremes. Like extremes give us certainty. The middle way is very difficult to walk because there's not a correct path. There's not like you're always discerning. Like, am I doing the right thing? I can go left or right. Like I don't really know. Like I'm on this knife's edge, and if I lean too much to the left, I fall. If I lean too much to the right, I fall. Like I'm constantly having to play in this silly gray area where there's these guys over there that seem really certain in the white, and there's a lot of guys over there in the black that seem really certain, and you can replace that with red or blue, left, right, whatever words you want. But they all seem certain. They all seem to know where they're going. But in truth, they're just as scared as you are on your middle path, but they just have each other.
Yeah, beware of the one who is certain. I mean, even if you've walked the path and come back to guide us there, it's like the river thing. I don't know. Is it the same? Nothing is the same. Nothing stays the same. You know, it was
Like,
so interesting to me because I feel like this was a couple years ago. This was might have been 2, 3 years ago. I was watching the news and they were saying that we're closer than ever to a civil war. It's like, what are you talking about? Hey, what are you talking about? Civil war? It's fear mongering. What is this? And then a year went by and it's like, you get more information. I was like, oh, wow, that's pretty bad. And then you get more information. And you're like, oh, it's not something my neighbor would do. It's not something I would do. It's not something normal Joe would do. That's pretty sick. You get more information. You're like, oh my god, somebody ref do something. Step in here, call it. And the ref is like, what am I gonna do? Um, and it's like now I'm at a weird point where I'm like, man, yeah, I mean, Civil War, man, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. But in truth, what's needed is to go to war with ourselves internally, not physically. Like, not like, hey, Chris, I'll meet you at we duel at noon, right? No, no, it's not like that. It's not what I'm referencing. But I think as a country and as a people, as humans, I mean, we need to do a lot more soul searching on what are we what are we okay with tolerating? What are we not okay with tolerating? What do we stand for? Are we I feel like this whole experiment has gotten out of hand a little bit, because humans are very flawed individuals, flawed animals. They're animals, but I don't know.
I think we need to learn to think for ourselves again. You know, there used to be a time where, you know, you lived on your old farm and you got, you know, you didn't learn much of anything. Like if you wanted, like you just kind of, you knew stuff by being taught stuff and like that is what it is. And I'm not saying we should go back to that where like knowledge was not capable or possible. Like we have all of this knowledge now, right? Like we are, and this is a podcast that we're actually going to have next week. I have a guest lined up to kind of talk about this, but like we're drowning, we're in a world that's drowning in information, but we've lost wisdom. We've lost the ability to discern information. And I think that only comes from you being able to look internally and figure out like, what is it that I want? And that's the reason that when we talk about like financial independence, we talk about these things. We always talk about like, what is the outcome that you want? Not the outcome that society placed on you, not the outcome that your parents told you, not the outcome that your boss wants or that your friends want or that your spouse wants, but like, what do you want? And it comes to the same thing when it comes to your thoughts. How many of us, you know, we hop on Fox News or you hop on MSNBC or a CNN or whatever, CBS, you know, whatever the left's version of it is. and you hop on there, you say like, tell me what to think. Like, I don't want to think. I don't want to be here presently right now. So you tell me what ideas, you tell me who to be mad at, you tell me all these things. We all have like our influencers or our podcast hosts or whatever. And these people think for me. And I'm basically a parrot. Like I just sit around and I parrot the ideas that I heard. And anytime that I come up against an idea that is counter to the idea that I think I already know, that I'm already so certain is the right answer, well, I don't consider it. I don't even listen to it. I just fight against it. I'll turn it off. I'll scream like you dumb liberal or you Nazi, and then I get to turn it off and not have to think about it because I must be the one that's certain. Like I must be right. And again, the most dangerous person. Well, you like maybe one of our listeners pissed off right now, or you might be know that guy that is like, man, I'm so right all the time. That is the most dangerous person. And rather than looking at the opposite side and being like, look at those idiots, like they're so certain they're right. But like clearly I'm the one that's right here. You are just as dangerous as that person is, but just on the opposite side. It's the person who's like, I don't know what the answer is. No one wants to follow that guy. No one wants to follow the person who's like, I don't know what the answer is, but like, let's figure it out together. Like, let's talk about it. Let's try to figure it out. No one wants to follow that person, but that is the person that should most likely lead us. Like, that is the person like that you want to follow. And that's the reason that like, when I discovered Buddhism, I was like, that was the first time in my life that I was like, oh, I get it. Like, this is one of the first philosophies that like, I'm like, I get it. Because this is a guy that went out, sat under a tree, meditated for a long time, suffered for a long time, and came back and be like, hey, I think I figured out an answer. You guys want to test it and like see if it works for you? And they're like, oh my gosh, like you're a god, you're a messiah, you're all these things. Like, no, I'm just a dude. Like I just tried doing some stuff. This is what works for me in my journey. How about you guys try it on? Like wear it like a hat, see if it works. If this hat feels bad for you, take it off. The current Dalai Lama, Tenzin Yatsu, he says, don't use Buddhism to be a better Buddhist. Use Buddhism to be better whatever you already are. And I'm not saying be a Buddhist. I'm not saying be anything, but I'm saying, have a critical eye, have your own opinions. And the only way that we as human beings can form opinions, because again, we can't see truth. No one can, is to try to get as much information as we possibly can, filter it through our frame of reference, through our brain, through the way that we see things based off our genetics, our backgrounds, our everything, in order to try to come a little bit closer to what we think the truth is and know that you will never reach it because we cannot. Like local realism is a real thing. Like 2 years ago, and I don't know why people don't talk about this, like the Nobel Prize went to two physicists who discovered that local realism is real. And I can kind of see you're like, I don't know what the hell Chris is saying right now. Like local realism is the concept that things outside of ourselves, outside of conscious entities, are not real. They only render the moment you look at it. So now we're kind of going into like what quantum physics is. And I understand whenever someone on a podcast talks about quantum physics, like that idiot has no idea what they're talking about. And even the greatest of scientists who are experts in quantum physics will be the first persons to tell you, we don't know how to talk about this. Like we're trying to use words to conceive of concepts that we can't even begin to, our brains can't understand. Because unlike most science, when we want to discover a system, we have the ability to stand outside of said system and be like, all right, I understand how this works because from outside, this is how it's working. But when it comes to these hard problems like astrophysics, when it comes to hard problems like consciousness, we can never get outside. We are always inside the balloon trying to understand the outside of the balloon. But we can never get the perspective to be able to see it. So, long way of saying we can never discern truth. And the person that says, like, I am certain, I know exactly what to do, they're just as lost as you. Just they believe they know what it is. And again, that is the most dangerous person because they are the person that will lead civilizations, cultures, people to some of the worst atrocities, given that they're stopped at one day or long enough in history. I guarantee you Genghis Khan thought he was doing the right thing. Hitler thought he was doing the right thing. You know, Alexander the Great thought he was doing the right thing. And if we look back on history, it might be like, yeah, like those people did some good things, some bad things, but like they went through, they pillaged, they destroyed, they took lives. in their conquest of power, in their conquest of what is right. And same thing for George Washington. And we remember him positively because of the way that history went. Oh yeah, okay, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
it depends on who you ask, but yeah, 100%, 100% though.
yeah.
Um,
Like our founding father, like I said, say our founding fathers. You have to remember, like human beings are messy, and like we all want this nice story of like this guy was good as to what I believe good is, and this guy was bad as to what I believe bad is. But I mean, Jesus Christ was like, he who cast the first stone should be absent of sin, and no one can throw the stone because we're like, oh my, okay, we've all messed up. And like we're in a world of social media where we love to like dunk on other people. Like, oh look, that guy messed up. Like, ha ha ha. Everyone look at him, look at him. Like, don't look at me. And like everyone's kind of in that spot. And I think this is what leads towards like these downfalls of civilizations is people forgetting the plot of like what are we here for? We're here to grow, to get better, to be in service of one another. Cause I say it a lot, like no one here is an island. No one shows up here on their own on this planet, and no one leaves this planet on their own.
it's funny, that was one of the first things that I highlighted in the book of meditations was that one of the main purposes for humans is to serve our fellow humans. And I agree, I think it's important. I think it's, if you're not doing stuff for other people, you know, what are you doing, right? I heard this yesterday, it made me think a little bit, and the question was, if you lost all of your memory, do you have a friend that could tell you exactly who you were? And if you don't have a friend like that who could tell you if you don't have someone in your life that could tell you "Hey, this is exactly who you are," do you really have a true friend? Because in truth, I mean, we hide stuff from everybody, right? We hide stuff. Certain information shouldn't be said to a wife or a girlfriend, right? Certain information shouldn't be said to a friend, XYZ, right? Or a mom or a dad, right? And we try and filter what we believe they should hear and should know. But hmm, why not be honest? Why not be 100% honest? I think I understand why not. I understand why, it's messy, right? 100% honesty is messy. It's like, "Hey, Chris, guess what? I had a mental breakdown yesterday. Hey, ready to record a podcast on mental health?" It's like, "What?" Um, but then I didn't. I'm sitting good. But, you know, it's such a weird world where everyone makes it so easy to lie, and there's, like, no consequences. I don't know. I feel like back in the day when I was growing up, it's like, man, if you I remember when I think his name was Brian Williams. Yeah, his name was Brian Williams. He was my favorite anchor on NBC. He was on a chopper and he told this story on I don't know where he told this story, but part of the story was fabricated and they kicked him off the air. And I was like, man, I really enjoyed watching the news, the way he spoke and just the way he carried himself. And it's so interesting. It's like, man, one lie and you're gone. You're off the air. We're not putting you on the air anymore.
And now we look for like, can you lie as like a trait for like, then you can have this job.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like, man, like the only way to get a job is to like lie through the interview. It's like, oh, you have 6 years experience. It's like actually 20 years experience. It's like you're 26. How does that happen? I'll look into that. I'll look into that.
Started when I
Um,
was 6, man.
I'm a hustler. I'm a grinder, man. That's why you should hire me. Nobody's better. I want to say that's like, man, the world is so strange. The world is so messed up. It's broken. It's like, dude, this is how it's always been. It's never not been this. And we just have, like you said, more information, but less wisdom. And I think it's time that we really stop and think and use those minds of ours so that they don't atrophy as AI comes to the rise and really start to develop that wisdom muscle.
Yeah. I do feel like we live in very interesting times though, in that like everything is coming to fruition at the same time, right? It's like the economy is going to hell where probably on the brink of World War III. Like all of this stuff is happening at the same time that AI, at the same time that there's this new maybe life form or whatever is like terraforming Earth and starting to like figure out things. Like it almost seems like this perfect. It seems like the perfect storm for like change. And
Yeah.
then I hope that all that we can do, like as just two podcasters and like just dudes, is like try to push people and like don't go into the extremes. Don't be certain. Like try to discern this because I don't know. Like I don't know if you would ask me like, Chris, what's going to happen next? Like I have no freaking idea. It's insane. So just try to focus on yourself. And I think the first thing to focus on yourself is like understanding yourself, and that kind of comes into like the deepest of questions, right, and the deepest of understandings. You know, you mentioned earlier if you were to lose all your memory and you had a friend to come to tell you like who you were, I guarantee that friend would be off on a bunch of things. But here's a scarier question that kind of made me think as you were saying that. Like, if you knew you were about to lose your memories and you got to like, so like I'm gonna lose my memories, but I can, control alt delete or whatever. I can back myself up to the last server. I can pull that last server version of myself to tell me who I am. You tell your new self who you are, do you think you'll still be able to tell you who you are right now? Like, do you know yourself deep enough to be able to download the exact same version of like consciousness, or would you lie to yourself? Because I've said it a lot, Don, but like the easiest person in the world for us to lie to is ourselves. Like we say the words of like, oh, don't lie, be honest. Like, how many times are we each lying to ourselves about who we are, about what we do? And that's why that's the reason that like know thyself, like you know, our boy Socrates is the most important thing because how? Like, how do you know yourself in truth? How do you know that you actually do?
How do you know? Find out next week. Um, no, it's almost an impossible question. Is the kind of the best way that I can mentally frame it. Because if it was like, it's not a question equal to what are we having for lunch? It's like, yeah, ham sandwich, easy. And it's not a question like that is impossible, but it's like it's almost impossible to answer. Where it's like,
I kind of think, well, I think based off our current knowledge base, it is impossible. Let's go back to what I talked about earlier about local realism and like
yeah, yeah,
understanding
please,
like consciousness, right? We can't understand it because we can't get outside of it. We are in it. Like, how do you study consciousness when you are a conscious being? You can't. Like, you're in it.
yeah,
How do you study astrophysics at like the macro level of like what's outside of what we can see? We don't know because we're in it. There's no way we could ever see more. It'd be like being a fish and trying to understand what is the ocean. Like you can't. You're in the ocean. You understand it from like a very deep level, but you can't actually get outside of it to see. So when it comes to ourselves, understand yourself, like know thyself. That's the most important thing. You will never be able to attain that because you are yourself. You can never take a moment to step outside to actually see yourself from a different place. You know, when I hear these things of like know thyself, like love you, Socrates, get it. And then I think the people that like are seasoned meditators, and I wouldn't put myself in that category, but I've had some moments, right, where you're like, okay, I kind of see through the plot. The more you look into the self and the more you like meditate on who am I, the more the lines get blurred. The more you realize like I'm nothing and I'm everything simultaneously. And for people that like hear that and they're like, this is woo woo, I don't know what the hell's going on. Like, I hope at some point you get to that level that you come to the realization of like, holy crap, these people, that Chris said it, or, these ancient people said it. Maybe it's Jesus, Mohammed, whatever religious factor you want to go with. They said these same truths over and over and over again. And that, love your brother as if they are you, love your neighbor as if they are you because they are. And you kind of come to these realizations when you study the self, when you study like the void of like, where do I begin and somewhere else ends? Whereas all of this, like if the goal is to know thyself, and maybe the real truth is there is no self, where do we go here? Like we're in a conundrum that maybe is an impossibility to solve. in this lifetime.
Yeah, I think it is a conundrum. It is a deep conundrum, and I think that one of the main goals of life is to keep learning, pass down wisdom, pass down knowledge, and it's important to have those guiding principles. Many people find them in the Bible. Many people find them in other religious books or other places. But I guess think of how boring life would be if everything was certain. It's like, hey, Chris, you're going to take option 32. Uh, this is what your life is going to be like. And you're going to die on April 2nd, 2072. Cool. It's like, man, that's not life. Life is the adventure. Life is going outside for a bike ride and swerving, getting out of the way of some grandma that almost ran you over. That's life. Exploration, learning. There's this meme of I think it's like Alex Jones where he's like quantum mechanics, secrets of the universe, going into space. This is destiny, and it's just like so funny. But it's kind of true. It's definitely true. It's life is learning, and it breaks my heart when I see people stop learning or that they don't fall in love with it. It's like, man, dude, you're missing out. You're missing out. I almost equate it. I It's funny because the way I see it now, looking inward, I'm like, man, I'll give a reference to this, but I'm like, man, am I snobby? I don't think I'm snobby, but am I? Am I just like a snobby prick now? Because I'm like, oh, the more you learn, say fast food, right? I don't really eat fast food anymore, unless it's like In and Out, which I like In and Out. I do like In and Out, but I'm not going to like McDonald's or Burger King or anything like that. Um, but a version of me would have. A version of me did many years ago. And I say this because, the more I've learned, it's like, oh man, this is what a real burger tastes like. This is what real food tastes like. This is how, when I make food, I do this XYZ, and this is how it comes out. This is beautiful. And I like this. But when I go somewhere else and my burger is, an eighth of an inch, and it's like, oh, this doesn't feel like meat. I don't know. It feels weird. The one thing I will say to those on the path of learning is really be grateful for what you know now and the peace that it brings you, because the more you know, some things you can't unlearn, some things you can't unsee. It's like, man, the taste of a chicken nugget when I was 6 years old coming back from Disneyland, like, I'll never forget that. I could go to Disneyland right now and have some chicken nuggets. It won't be the same, right? It just won't be the same. Um, man, those chicken nuggets, so good. But yeah, the more you know, the more things change, and it's like, man, the only thing that's constant is change, man. It's nothing stays the same for this river quote is like our new it's like our new anthem for the Fi Guys, man. It's like, step in the river, man. You're never gonna step in it exactly the same. It's crazy. It's just insane to me. It's so true. It's so true. And that's why, I was talking to my dad about this, and I was just kind of ranting a little bit about everything. 'Cause he gave me some advice on, I don't even know if it was solicited. I think it was unsolicited advice just on like, it's like, oh yeah, it's like, we got to do this because like in 30 years, next generation, you'll have this and then you can give this to your kids. I'm like, I don't know if we got to get to the next generation first. Let's get through it here. And, I was speaking, I was like, man, things are terrible. 50 examples of how terrible it is. And then I stopped and I thought about it and I'm like, and I'm grateful for how terrible it is because I know it could be so much worse.
Hmm.
I know, like, if the power grid went out and, I mean, we have to forage for food, I would give anything to be where I am right now. I would give anything and then some to be where I am right now with a fridge full of food and, an air conditioner that works. And really, it's like everything is all about perspective. And I think sometimes we get lost in the sauce and like, hey, let's get some perspective in here. Um, but yeah, Chris, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I think it's just well, the big thing that I keep on coming back to is that lifelong learning, and feel like so much of it comes down to like that, to like continuing to stay curious. And I feel like we live in a society and like even school, like our traditional schooling system, like teaches beats curiosity out of kids, like as if it was a factory. Like, oh, you're curious about those things? Like, not anymore. I'm gonna wreck that for you, and then we end up
Yeah.
having this society of people that are uninterested and unwilling to learn, and then they end up being certain on things. And the moment you become certain, like I know this definitively, it's not belief. Like it is like you're beyond belief into like I know you've stopped learning. You've stopped learning, maybe not in all subject, but you stop learning in that subject. There's this old quote and there's an old thing that comes like science or advancements happen not one birth at a time, but one funeral at a time. Like the old guard, the people that learn things, they sit there and they're like, this is the way things are because this is what I discovered. This is the way I believe things should be. We are not going to change it because they became certain. Like I know this is how it works because it's worked for me. And then it's not until people die, the old guard dies, and then the new guard can take all the knowledge that they had plus new knowledge that they've acquired and be like, no, actually, I think it's this. We move a little bit more, but then that person becomes entrenched and says, this is actually the way because I figured it out based off of their knowledge plus my knowledge to get to where we are. And then again, we have to wait for the cycle to continue for the next group to die and be like, all right, this is actually how it works. Like I go back a lot to like this level of certainty is might be the most dangerous thing in the world. Because again, we have these brains that we want certainty. We crave it like nothing, like a man drowning in the desert or or dying of thirst in the desert. We crave certainty in an uncertain, chaotic world that scares the living daylights out of us, that we don't understand why the hell we are here. Like the more you begin to like really contemplate our situation, like we are on a rock hurtling through nothingness. Like just take it in for a second. Like there is nothingness out there. And somehow it's both simultaneously expanding and contracting. Like, we don't understand it. And those who say they understand it don't. Like we just don't. Like we're in a precarious, weird ass place. Like we're on a spaceship hurtling through Earth, and like right now in the Amazon, like that's our life support system that allows us to continue to keep oxygen on the spaceship. Or we're like, no, let's burn it all down in order to like build some factories. You know,
Yeah.
like it's like you really need to like think through this and like have a wider concept and to like realize like I don't know what the answer is and no one does and that's okay. Like we figure it out together, one step at a time. Let's relate it back to financial independence. You don't need the perfect plan to start. The perfect plan is an illusion. It's not real. You need to find the next reasonable step to keep moving forward until you get there. And luckily, it's like, the nice thing is in life, in many aspects of life, there aren't many steps that you can't undo. Just like walking down the street. You can step forward, step forward, step forward. You step on something, you can undo it. You just take a step back. There's no perfect analogy, but there's always like the most of the time in life, there are ways to walk through different doors, walk through different paths. And if you don't like the path, like hiking, you're on a path, you're walking, maybe like I've been on many hikes where the trail kind of gets a little blurred. You're like, I think that's a trail. You end up off the path a little bit. You're like, oh, we're on the wrong thing. Like either I'm gonna have to like go mountaineering a little bit, or I'm just gonna go back on the path and find the right path. Like that's just the way it is. And then the bigger thing is to realize there is no path.
Yeah. Yeah. You said something right there that, and it was so funny, like what one word will do to a sentence or to a life. But you said you have to find the next reasonable step. And that keyword reasonable, what's the next reasonable step? Is like the biggest insurance policy to me, because knowing me, it's like, all right, the next step, it's like for me, it's like I want to do more woodworking, right? Sell those pieces. It's like, all right, the next step is to buy the $1,200 sprayer. It's like, whoa, that's not like, hey, I'm gonna go spend $50 on some paint or whatever. Like that's a huge purchase, right? Um, it's like, okay, is that the next reasonable step? It's like, no, it's not the next reasonable step. It's like, okay, well then let's take an appropriate um direction to this, and let's take a reasonable step to it. Um, I think that's very interesting. I'd never heard the reasonable part of it, and I think it's so valid because like if you remove the reasonable, this is, and I'm getting goofy with it, but like if you remove the reasonable part of this, people will then get stuck on the next step. It's like it's not that complicated, right? Next reasonable step. Maybe this isn't as like groundbreaking for you. It is for me right now because obviously you're teaching it, right? And I'm learning it, but that's very useful for me right now.
And I think that's where like wisdom comes in, right? Like
Yeah.
that is wisdom. Like that is wisdom, and that you ask the question like, how do you become wise? It's like by living, by trying, by doing, by effing up over and over and over again until you become wise. Like there isn't a way. Like you don't come out wise. You gain wisdom, you gain that divinity or whatever word you want to obtain to it by going into the arena over and over and over again. Like, how do you get good at jujitsu? By going to jujitsu class every single week. Like, how do I get good at surfing? By surfing every time. Like, I can't sit there. I think this is a perfect example. Like when I used to train, when I used to teach jujitsu in the early mornings in Phoenix. We have this guy that would come in pretty often. He would watch in the mornings. He just sit on the outside the mat, just watch us do class. And I remember I asked him like every time, like, hey man, you want to come on the mat? Like you want to train? Like I'd be happy to get the paperwork. You can, sign the waivers and like I'll give you a gi. Like you can come on, just train for free. Like I'm not even gonna charge you for like you get a free class, dude. He's like, no, I'm just here learning. I'm here watching them learning. I'm like, okay, like cool. Like I assume like, do you know jujitsu? Like you here just like learning our techniques? And he's like, nope, nope, never done this before. And, I think about that guy, and I think about most of us in life where we'll sit there and we'll take in information. We say it a lot. I'm gonna try to not gonna butcher it, hopefully on the first time, but education without action is just entertainment. Boom, first time, got it. Um,
Yes. Very
but
good.
so many of us will watch YouTube videos, will listen to podcasts, will do all these things, and just like this person watching guys train jujitsu, the first time that he steps on the mat, it's not gonna go the way he thinks it is. And how many of us were like, don't worry, I know about finances, I know about this stuff. I watched a bunch of YouTube videos, I read like 6 books, and now I am ready to like, give me the computer, let me start trading options. Like I've read like 20 books, so don't worry about it, buddy. You know, don't worry. Derivative, like I got that, boom. Can buy, sell, whatever. I'll short that too. And you hear about people doing these types of things, but until you step into the arena, until you like really get in there, you don't know anything. And that's where like even like the doctoral program comes in. Of like once you know almost every or most of what you think you need to know, that's when you're like, I don't know anything. But how many of us are running around with the Dunning Kruger effect, feeling like because I know so little about a subject, in truth, I think I know it all because I'm too dumb to realize that I don't know anything. And, just like, and then the experts in fields are like, yeah, I don't know anything because they know that they don't know everything and they know where their limits or they think they know where their limits go to. And they're like, yeah, there's stuff beyond this that we don't understand. We just don't, we can't, we don't have the ability, but we know this is how it works or we think this is how it works. So we go up to that limit. And it's like that in all things.
Yeah, once you see the way broadly, you see it in all things. Hmm. I don't know. I don't know what else I can say to that.
Well, then in that case, I hope that our audience enjoyed this wide ranging conversation. Like I said, typically we come each week with a topic, something that we want to discuss, something we want to teach. And I think this week we just want to try something. I want to try something a little different of seeing like what did maybe our subconscious want to teach? What did we want to talk about? Where did we want to find? What were we working on in the background that we needed help with? And just allowing that conversation to guide us there. Because, as someone who works in finances, who does a lot of stuff with money, so many people, they're like, what is financial planning? And financial planning, it's nice, it's projection, it's a lot of things, but in my opinion, financial planning, what you're really paying for when you do it, is the conversation. Financial planning happens in the conversation, not in the certainty that I know what the future is going to hold, but in the understanding of, oh, this is where I actually want to go. This is what's actually important to me, and I didn't know that until I started to talk about it out loud. I thought I knew it in my head, but in truth, I just gave myself a lot of outs. I think those who meditate on your own thinking, you'll realize how freaking crazy it is. Like the moment you think like, oh, I'm on the same tangent. No, you're not. You've jumped 20 different tangents in the same tangent, but you didn't realize all the outs you gave yourself. You didn't realize how many times you lied to yourself in order to feel like, that was the exact same tangent. It wasn't. Like you moved the plot over and over and over again. And that's okay. That's life. But that's where we get to learn and grow and become better in service of one another, with one another. No one here on this planet is an island. No one comes into this world alone. No one leaves this world alone. And I always like to say, because some people say, like, what if you die in the forest? Like, alone. Like, you're not truly alone. Your body will be consumed by the earth and you will go back into it. Like, you are not alone. And to any listeners that are out there that are like, no, I'm alone, I feel so alone. Like, you're not. Like, you have us. You have people that do care about you. Just because you can't see them, they're there.
Absolutely.
Tom, would you close this out?
Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope this encourages you to have a deep philosophical question or a conversation with a friend or a family member, someone who inspires you, someone who thinks similarly, also thinks differently than you. And I think it's important to have these conversations on the regular. And for us, that's Mondays and Fridays. So if you want to come on by, stop on by, say hello, we're always welcome. I hope that you did take something out of this. I know I did. And if I took something out of it, if it helped me, then it has to help someone else, right? But with that being said, guys, I'm Dom. He's Chris. We will see you back here on Monday. Hope you guys have an amazing rest of your week and weekend, depending on when you're listening to this. And we'll see you in the next one.
Later.
Peace.
Sponsored by Monzon Wealth. The content in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. We do not endorse specific products or services. Past performance does not guarantee future results. The opinions expressed are those of the hosts and guests, not the podcast sponsor. It is crucial to consult with a qualified financial advisor or professional who can provide advice tailored to your specific needs before making any financial decisions, investments, or taking any other actions. If you are seeking specified help, you can reach out to Chris at monzonwealth.com.